Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a topic that I think is really important for anybody who's ever built a website or launched an app, and that's user engagement. And you've sent over some really interesting material about how PWAs, those progressive web apps, can make a big difference.
Yeah, we've got a ton of stuff. We've got research, case studies, even some people who are like PWAs are terrible or native apps are the only way to go. So what we want to do today is cut through all the noise and figure out if PWAs might be that thing that you've been looking for to really boost engagement.
Perfect. So I know you've been following the PWA scene for a while now. What's the one thing that really stood out to you after looking at all this stuff?
It's got to be the impact PWAs are having on these bottom line numbers. It's not just they're nice to have. There's actual data showing that PWAs are increasing these conversion rates, reducing those bounce rates, and even boosting how long a user sticks around. Some studies are even showing double-digit increases in conversion rates. I mean, that's huge.
Okay, so we're talking results, not just hype. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back for a sec. For someone who might not know, how would you explain what makes PWAs so different?
Okay, imagine this. You're on a website, but it feels like you're using your favorite app. Super responsive, very engaging. You can add to your home screen. It loads crazy fast, even on a bad connection. Sometimes you can even use it offline. That's the power of PWAs. They bridge that gap between the open web and the app experience.
So it's not just about looks, it's about how it works too. But, there are a ton of apps out there. What makes PWAs stand out?
Frictionless, for sure. Think about what you usually do to use a new app. You got to go to the App Store, you download it, you wait for it to install, then you probably have to create an account. By the time you're actually in the app, you've probably lost interest. PWAs, they cut out most of those steps. They're right there on the web, so click it, you're in. And to install, you just add a bookmark to your home screen. Super simple.
That makes sense. Especially nowadays where everyone wants things to happen like that. But you mentioned offline functionality. Isn't that usually just for native apps? How do PWAs do that?
Okay, this is where it gets interesting. PWAs use these things called service workers. And these workers are like little programs running in the background of your browser. What they do is they can cache data, which means they store important info locally on your device. So even if you lose your internet connection, the PWA can still use that stored data and, keep working at least a little bit.
Okay, so you can't do everything offline, but for things like looking at products or reading articles you've already opened, that's a game changer.
Exactly. And that's just one part of it. PWAs are built using the latest tech, stuff that makes them really fast and efficient. They do things like lazy loading, which means only the really important parts of the page load first, and the rest only loads if you need it. This makes them super fast, even on bad internet.
So it sounds like PWAs are really changing what a website can be.
Absolutely. They're being used for everything: online stores, news sites, fitness trackers, games. And because they're built on these web standards, they work on almost any device: smartphones, tablets, desktops, even some smart TVs.
That's huge, especially if you're a company trying to reach as many users as possible.
Right. And let's not forget the cost. Developing a native app for both Apple and Android can be super expensive, especially for smaller businesses or startups. PWAs offer a much cheaper solution since you're basically building one app that works everywhere.
Okay, so businesses save money, they reach more people, and development is faster. But what about the users? Why would they choose a PWA over our regular website?
Think about the features. Speed, working offline, that home screen shortcut, push notifications, all of these make it feel more like an app so people want to keep using it. But it's more than that. They can also tap into the latest web stuff to access things like location, camera, even sensors on your device. This lets developers create way better and more interesting experiences.
You mentioned APIs, and I'm not sure everybody knows what that is. Can you explain what that means for PWAs?
Sure. An API, or an application programming interface, is like a set of rules,
Right.
They let different software parts talk to each other. In PWAs, APIs let the developers tap into your device's hardware and software. So they can do stuff like using your phone's GPS for location-based stuff, or access your camera to take pics or scan barcodes.
So it's like PWAs have this whole toolbox they can use to create cool and interactive stuff. But do they really have the same access as native apps?
That's a great question, and it's a big part of the whole PWAs versus native apps debate. PWAs are getting more access to device features because web stuff is always evolving, but they don't always have the same level of deep integration like native apps do.
So there are still some limits.
Yeah, there can be. For example, a PWA might have limited access to stuff like Bluetooth or NFC, which some apps need. So it's really about weighing those limitations with the benefits of PWAs when deciding what's best for your project.
That makes sense. It's not like one is always better. But let's talk more about those user engagement features. Push notifications, for example. Don't those have a bad reputation? How do PWAs use them the right way?
Personalization. It's all about making it personal. It's not like those generic, annoying notifications we all hate. PWAs can use what they know about you and what you like to send you notifications that are actually useful.
So it's not just sending the same message to everybody.
No way. Imagine you're on a clothing website's PWA, and you add some things to your wish list. Then later, you get a notification telling you those items are on sale. That's targeted and makes you want to go back to the PWA.
Now that's a notification I'd want. It's about knowing what the user cares about and giving them information that's useful.
Right. And it's not just about sales. A news PWA could send you breaking news alerts, stuff you're interested in. Or a travel PWA could tell you about flight deals to places you've searched before.
It's like having a personal assistant for all things digital.
Exactly. And that's just one way PWAs can boost engagement. Let's talk about another big thing. Design.
Design. What's different about PWA design and why does it matter for engagement?
Okay, think about apps you love using. They're usually smooth, easy to use, with cool animations and transitions that make it fun to use. PWAs are designed with that same attention to detail. They create an engaging and easy-to-use experience that's just as good as native apps.
So it's not just squeezing a website into an app-like box. It's about creating an experience specifically for that format.
Yeah. And that's where the responsiveness of PWAs comes in. They're built to adapt to different screen sizes, whether you're on a phone, tablet, or a computer.
So no more zooming in and out to read tiny text.
Nope. PWAs give you a good experience on any device, which is super important for keeping people engaged.
So this all sounds amazing, but why should the average person care about any of this? Like, what's the real impact of these features?
Well, at the end of the day, all this stuff, the speed, offline access, push notifications, design it all, creates a better experience for the user. And a better experience leads to happier customers, more sales, and ultimately a more successful business.
Happy users, happy business. But we've really only scratched the surface here. In the next part, we'll look at some examples of PWAs that are out there right now and totally crushing it when it comes to user engagement. So stick around.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about what PWAs are and how they can benefit businesses and users, but let's see some real-world examples. What are some PWAs that are actually living up to these promises? I bet you've got some cool examples.
Oh, yeah. One that comes to mind right away is the Starbucks PWA. They did a fantastic job with it. Like, they made ordering super easy. You can browse the menu, you can customize your drink, even pay, all right there in the PWA. You don't even need to open their app.
So you're telling me I could order my coffee from bed and skip the line in the morning? Dangerous. Very dangerous. Yeah. But seriously, what kind of impact did this have on Starbucks' engagement? Oh, it was huge. Their customer satisfaction went way up, and a lot of people started using the PWA as their go-to way to order. What's really interesting is that it wasn't just about being convenient. Starbucks used the PWA to offer special deals and rewards, so people were even more likely to use it.
So everybody wins. Customers get a better experience, and Starbucks gets more engagement and loyalty. That's smart. Do you have any other examples that show how PWAs can work across different industries?
For sure. Let's look at Flipkart. They're a big e-commerce company in India, and they had a problem. A lot of their customers had really bad internet access. So what did they do? They made a PWA.
I'm seeing a trend here, but how did a PWA fix their internet problem?
Remember service workers? Well, Flipkart's PWA used them to save product catalogs and other important info so people could browse and even buy things offline. This was a total game changer for people in areas with bad internet who could finally shop online without a problem.
Wow. That's an amazing example of how PWAs can make things better for everyone. It's not just about engagement, it's about making things accessible for everyone.
Right. And remember, engagement isn't just about getting new users. It's about keeping the ones you have coming back. PWAs have some pretty cool tricks for that too.
Okay, tell me more about these user retention tricks.
Think about what keeps you using your favorite apps. Personalized recommendations, maybe a loyalty program, or even some game-like stuff. Well, PWAs can do all of that.
Gamification. I never thought of that for a website. What would that look like in a PWA?
Okay, imagine a fitness tracker, PWA. Right. You get badges for finishing your workouts. or a language learning app that gives you points for your progress. This kind of stuff makes it fun and competitive, which can be really motivating.
So it's all about using those psychological things that make us want to achieve stuff and get recognition. That's really cool. But let's be real for a second. PWAs sound almost too good. Are there any downsides? Are there any things people should watch out for?
You're right to be a little skeptical.
Yeah.
While PWAs are great, there are some things to keep in mind. One of the biggest challenges is that the technology is still pretty new. So sometimes PWAs don't work exactly the same on every browser and every device.
So you're saying it might not be a perfect experience every time?
Yeah, sometimes. For example, a feature might work perfectly in one browser, but then be a little glitchy in another. And that can be frustrating for people.
So testing and making sure it works well everywhere is super important. Anything else to watch out for?
Another thing is that PWAs don't always have access to all the features and APIs that native apps do.
Okay, so sometimes a native app might still be the better option, depending on what you need it to do.
Yeah, that's right. Like if you're making a game with really intense graphics or you need to access really specific hardware features, a native app might be better. It's about choosing the right tool for the job, you know?
Makes sense. You need to know what you're getting into and choose what's best for you and your users. But even with those limitations, it seems like PWAs are going to be really important in the future of web development.
Oh, absolutely. They're fast, they're accessible, they're engaging. In a lot of cases, they're a really great alternative to traditional apps.
Mm.
And as things get better and better, we're going to see even more innovative and awesome PWAs popping up.
I'm excited to see what happens. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's bring it back to the bigger picture. We've talked about PWAs and engagement. What are some other trends and innovations that are changing the way we interact with digital stuff?
That's a great question. One thing that's really huge right now is personalization. People want experiences that are tailored to them, things that fit their needs and preferences.
Yeah, those generic one-size-fits-all experiences just don't cut it anymore. People want to feel like they're special.
Exactly. And as data analytics and AI keep getting better, companies are becoming way better at delivering those personalized experiences. They can recommend stuff you'll probably like, show you content based on what you've done before, even change the way the app looks to fit your style. It's getting really sophisticated.
It's almost like having a custom digital experience made just for you. What other trends do you see shaping the future of engagement?
Another big one is immersive technology. Things like augmented reality, AR, and virtual reality, VR. These technologies have the potential to totally change how we interact with digital content, like blurring the lines between the physical and digital worlds.
That sounds crazy futuristic. Can you give me some examples of how AR and VR are being used to make things more engaging?
Totally. Imagine trying on clothes virtually before you buy them, or taking a virtual tour of a house you're thinking about buying, all without leaving your couch. Those are just a couple examples of how AR and VR are creating these super cool immersive experiences.
It sounds like we're on the edge of a whole new way of interacting with technology. Any other trends we should be watching?
Voice search and voice assistants are becoming more and more important. Voice technology is getting so much better, and it's changing how we use our devices and get information online.
Oh, for sure. It seems like everyone is talking to their smart speaker or phone these days.
Right. And it's only going to get bigger. For businesses, this means they need to make their websites and PWAs voice-friendly, so people can find them through voice search and use them with their voice.
So it's not just about having a good-looking website anymore. It's about creating an experience that works for all sorts of interaction styles.
Exactly. And speaking of creating a well-rounded experience, we can't forget about artificial intelligence, or AI.
It seems like AI is everywhere these days. How is it being used to boost engagement?
AI can do a bunch of things, like personalize content, automate stuff, and give companies really useful insights about their users. Think about those AI-powered chatbots that can help you with customer support or give you personalized recommendations. They're already making the digital experience way smoother and more engaging.
It's like having a personal assistant who knows what you need and is always ready to help.
Yep. And as AI gets even smarter, we're going to see even more amazing applications that boost engagement in ways we can't even imagine yet.
So the future of engagement sounds like a mix of personalization, immersion, voice tech, and AI. That's a lot to keep up with. What advice would you give to businesses who are trying to figure all this out?
The most important thing is to be flexible, experiment, and keep learning. Be open to new technologies, but don't just use them because they're trendy. Always focus on what's best for the user and make sure any tech you use actually makes their experience better.
Great advice. Don't get caught up in the hype. Focus on the people. But we've talked a lot in this part. Are there any key points you want our listeners to remember?
The biggest thing to remember is that user engagement is super important. It's not just something extra to think about. It needs to be a core part of any successful digital strategy. Whether you're making a website, a native app, or a PWA, the rules are the same. Know your users, give them something valuable, make it easy and enjoyable to use, and always look for ways to improve.
Well said. This has been a really insightful look at user engagement and PWAs, but there's a question that's been on my mind. So we've talked about how PWAs are kind of like a bridge between websites and apps, but could this be like a sign of things to come? Like, could we be moving toward a future where the lines between the two get even blurrier? A future where the web itself feels more like an app, like super smooth and engaging, the way we usually think of native apps?
That's interesting. And, it's not impossible. Web stuff is getting better all the time. Browsers are getting more powerful, and we're already seeing the web become more dynamic and interactive. PWAs are a perfect example. They're really pushing the limits of what's possible on the web, creating experiences that are just as good as native apps when it comes to performance and what they can do.
So maybe it's not about native apps completely going away. Maybe it's more about the web evolving, becoming more app-like. That's actually pretty exciting.
I think so too. Think about the possibilities. Developers and businesses could create these really immersive and engaging experiences, and everyone could access them, no matter what device they're using.
I like that vision of the future. But let's bring it back to today. What are some of the big things you want our listener to walk away with from all this talk about PWAs and user engagement?
Well, the first thing is this. User engagement isn't just some fancy word. It's super important for any digital product or service that wants to be successful. Whether you're building a website, a mobile app, or a PWA, you always got to be thinking, how do I make this something that people will love and keep coming back to?
Yeah, it's about really knowing your audience, knowing what they need, and giving them something that's even better than they expected.
Exactly. And PWAs give you all these tools to do just that. They're fast, they're reliable, they work offline, and they have all these cool features that make them a really strong option for companies that want to create truly amazing digital experiences.
But like we've been saying, it's not just about using the newest tech. It's about using it the right way to make things better for the user and get them really engaged.
Totally. It's important to keep learning about the latest trends in user engagement, personalization, immersion, voice tech, AI, all that stuff. Be willing to try new things and adapt so you can create experiences that really connect with your audience.
Great advice. This has been an amazing deep dive. I feel like we've just scratched the surface, though. But before we wrap up, I have one last question. We've talked a lot about the tech side of PWAs and engagement, but at the end of the day, isn't it all about human connection?
You're absolutely right. User engagement is about creating a real connection between a brand and its audience. It's about trust, loyalty, and making people feel like they matter.
It's about that human touch that goes beyond any specific technology.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into PWAs and user engagement. I think this has been a super interesting conversation. And to our listener, we hope this has given you some good info and some new ideas for your own projects.
Don't forget to stay curious, keep exploring, and never underestimate how powerful a truly engaging digital experience can be.
We'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on PWAs? Have you used any? Let us know. And here's something to think about. Could PWAs actually become the main way we experience the web someday? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, the future of digital engagement is looking bright, and we can't wait to see what happens next. Until next time, happy diving.